Hello guys, and today I'm going to teach you about the power of the pawns, okay? Now let's start from the beginning. These are just some simple moves. Right, now at this stage it looks fairly innocuous and fairly innocent, and it doesn't like there's going to be a very quick checkmate from here. But nothing is quite what it seems. Let's look at the next move. I think this here is with the my opponent trying to protect this pawn here. Computer thinks it's a bad move, and they're probably right, but at the moment it all looks rather innocent. Now, I move the bishop out to threaten this pawn if ever the bishop is moved out somehow. It's also a distraction from what I really intend. You'll notice the computer recommends that I should use queen, not knight, to move that here instead. That's actually a good move, and it will be used next. Now my opponent tries to threaten my bishop, but I'm not really bothered about that too much. Instead, I'm going to move the knight. I'm going to let them take the bishop if they want, but they never actually do. In fact, for the rest of this game, this bishop never moves, and nor does that pawn, amazingly. But what this also does is it allows the queen to move out to here, because the queen couldn't move while the knight was blocking it. For some reason, my opponent is really scared of this knight and thinks they can take the bishop later. However, so they think I might do a knight exchange and then save my bishop, is what they probably suspect I would do, but I don't. What I'm going to do is far more shocking than that. I'm going to put them in check. They actually move the king. Now they've moved the king in the position that the computer thinks is the best possible position. Now, I want to make this clear. This is a computer analysis after the game has been done. I played against a real human opponent, to the best of my knowledge, okay? Now, rather than taking the knight, which I didn't want to do, because they've now moved their king, I'm now going to move the knight here. This is what is known as a forking check. Okay? And it allows me to threaten the king here. And at the same time, after the king has been moved, it allows me to take the queen. Now, because there's a queen here, the king cannot move here to protect its own queen. So therefore, the king has no choice but to move here, allowing me... Oh, it could have moved there instead. So it could have moved either there or there. So it says moving there is excellent, but it thought this would have been better. Now it thinks that's an excellent move. I'm not quite sure why, because it's actually trapping the king to some extent, but we'll worry about that in a moment. Okay, so they move there. So the computer doesn't think they did a terrible move. Okay. Now, I take the queen. This is what you'd expect me to do. And now, the computer is now threatening my queen. So, I move down, check, and I avoid it. They move a pawn again to try and threaten my queen again. So I move the queen over here, check. They move a pawn down, and this is considered a terrible move by the computer. Okay, and they think that it would have been better to have pinned the knight. Probably the reason why my opponent didn't do that is they probably thought if they moved the knight, it would trap the knight so they couldn't move the knight later. They hadn't perhaps analysed this as deeply as maybe the computer has analysed this, okay? So then, because often people don't like having pieces trapped, because if the knight had been moved there, then they couldn't move the knight later if they wanted to, okay? Whereas a pawn they probably didn't care about, and a pawn looked as if it's threatening my queen directly, whereas a knight being moved there doesn't look like it's threatening anything, especially as it can't move because it would be pinned by the king. But never mind. I then moved it up out the way. This seems at this point fairly innocent, but it's actually unbelievably lethal. Okay. Now, for some reason I don't understand, they decided to move a rook over. Maybe they thought that was going to take the pawn off. I've no idea, but for some reason it said that they moved this rook over, and the computer recommended they move this rook down. I later looked into what would happen if you did move this rook down, and it would make no difference whatsoever. They would still be checkmated. So I don't understand what the benefit would have been of doing that. So anyway, next move I did was here, check. Now instead I could have got a checkmate by moving directly here. So if I moved the queen there, it would have been checkmate, which is the move I do next. The king is moved here, and it says this is a forced move, so this means the king had absolutely no choice but to move there. The next move I do is I move the queen there, checkmate. All be protected by this knight. And don't forget, this knight had just started down here when it looked very innocent and totally innocuous, and within just a few moves it got checkmate and was incredibly lethal. Whereas this bishop, which might have looked more threatening, didn't cause such a problem. Now the bishop also would help with the checkmate here as well, but it doesn't really matter because the knight's here. If the knight hadn't been there, then the bishop could have done the same pretty much. But the bishop was, you know, vulnerable. It could have been taken off, but I could have protected it. But anyway, let's go back a little while. Let's see what would have happened if White had done what the computer suggested. Well, If white had done what the computer suggested, it would have gone here, which I said is the best possible move. I then could not have moved here for checkmate. But I can still move here. Check. My opponent has still, because it emphasizes a forced move, my opponent still has no alternative. I can then move here, checkmate. What's it? Ah. Right, that's why they suggested it. I didn't spot it originally. I didn't understand why. Now I do. Very good. Now the king could have moved out. Then I would but then, because of this bishop here, I can move here, checkmate. So even if they had moved that rook where they wanted, where the computer told it to move, it would still could not have stopped checkmate. There was absolutely no way they could have prevented checkmate. So I don't understand, why moving, they said that going back, they said that moving the rook would have been the best move. I don't understand it. I really, genuinely don't get it. Because to me, there are probably better ways of moving some pawns so that the king can move around more and try and escape. But that's what the computer suggested, okay? So there you go. That shows the power. So in fact, even keeping the bishop there would have helped. So although I could, if I'd have wanted to earlier, tried to save it, move it back a bit to here, and then done some fancy stuff. But there you go. So there you go, a checkmate from a position that seemed incredibly innocent. And I showed you all the different possibilities, okay? Thanks for watching, guys. So never underestimate a knight, okay? Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.